I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons first. Thank you so much to my Bibliospren, Bibliohowlers, and my Bibliomancers. It means a lot to me that you give me your extra support for my passion and hobby. Hi everyone, Petrik here. So today's video will be about a top favorite series of all time. But again, this is not my list, but I just want to satisfy my curiosity about something and then share the result with you. So this will be like a comparison of lists. I have compiled data from more than 50 booktubers. I got this data from Matt's book reviews video where I was included as well. So in this video, more than 50 booktubers talk about some of their favorite series of all time. And then I will compare this to the best novels, the best fantasy novels posted on Our Fantasy 2023. I'm not active on Reddit, but if I'm not mistaken, Our Fantasy 2023, the award for the best fantasy novel, was posted last January or February. So I will compare these two data. The reason behind this is because I think some people usually said that booktubes or maybe booktube reviews and lists are constrained in a bubble. So what's popular and what's loved on booktube doesn't mean that they're loved outside of booktube. And then something loved on Reddit doesn't mean they're loved outside of Reddit as well. This kind of thing always interests me, and that's also why I made that video where I asked 400 readers to decide which one is the best fantasy series of all time. So today's video isn't to decide which list is actually better, but it is to see whether 50 booktubers' votes can actually be similar to the list contained on Reddit, which contain almost 10,000 votes. So yeah, that is a huge difference. 50 booktubers and almost 10,000 votes on Reddit. And the result is quite interesting in my opinion. And once again, before I really get started, I just want to make it clear once more that this is not to say that the booktubers lists are better than the one on Reddit, or the one on Reddit are better than the one on booktubes. This is not to decide which one is better. This is just a comparison data. So the way I will tackle this, first I will mention the most voted series by 50 booktubers. There are 14 of them. Why only top 14 series? Well, because based on the data I got, only 14 fantasy series received more than one vote as the best fantasy series of all time. So I will be comparing these top 14 fantasy series of all time according to 50 booktubers compared to the top 14 fantasy series of all time according to almost 10,000 votes on Reddit on Our Fantasy. So yeah, let's get started. I will start from the one chosen by booktubers first, and then I will talk about the one chosen on Our Fantasy 2023. Let's start with the one that received 2 votes first, and here we have 5 series. The first one is Threadlight by Zach Argyle. So this is the only self-published fantasy series on this list. I haven't read this series yet. Many people have mentioned that if you love Mistborn or Lightbringer by Brent Wicks, I think there's a good chance you will end up loving a Threadlight trilogy by Zach Argyle. And right now, there is actually a Kickstarter for the Omnibus edition. Beautiful. It is so beautiful. And the Kickstarter campaign is still ongoing right now, so you should check that out. Then the next series that received 2 votes is the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I do believe that the Dandelion Dynasty has been gaining plenty of momentum lately, especially on BookTube, and I'm really glad to see that. I don't know how the situation it is for outside of BookTube, but considering that the Dandelion Dynasty is one of my top favorite series of all time, I am glad to see that this at least received 2 votes. I think that's one from me. And then the next series that received 2 votes is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. This is quite a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, The Wheel of Time is one of the most popular fantasy series of all time, and I thought this would receive more votes from booktubers. And then we have The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. This is a great series, and I think it deserves so much more recognition. I think The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham, or The Dagger and the Coin by the same author, is criminal. Both of them are criminally underrated. I think although he's super famous for the Expanse series, I think his epic fantasy series, Daniel Abraham's fantasy series, deserves more recognition. And compared to the first time when I read The Long Price Quartet in the year 2017 or 2018, it's been great to see that more readers are jumping into The Long Price Quartet and loving the series. But it is still very underrated in my opinion. And finally, the last series that received 2 votes from more than 50 plus booktubers is the Green Bone Saga by Fondali, and I am definitely one of them. I consider this the best fantasy trilogy that I've ever read, and I still hope this will keep on gaining more readership and recognitions. It is absolutely amazing. So that's 5 series already. Now let's talk about the one that received 3 votes from Booktubers. And the first one is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Now, full disclosure, the series actually received only 2 votes on the list, but I haven't included my vote in that video because I talk only about my favorite completed fantasy series on that video, on that compilation video posted by Matt's Book Review. So now I'm including my vote. So there are 3 votes for A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I don't think I need to say anything else about this series. This is one of the most popular fantasy series of all time, one of the most beloved. I do honestly thought, just like The Wheel of Time, this would receive more votes from more than 50 plus booktubers though. And then for the next one with a similar situation is The Dresden Files by James Butcher. This is probably the most popular urban fantasy series right now, and I think we are all waiting for the next installment in The Dresden Files, but right now, yeah, out of more than 50 plus booktubers votes, this one received 3 votes. And finally, the last series that received 3 votes is This World by Terry Pratchett. This is one of the 2 series out of the top 14 fantasy series chosen by booktubers that I haven't read yet. The first one is Twilight Trilogy by Zach Argyle that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I haven't finished any book in this world yet, but I do understand that this one is one of the most popular fantasy series also, just like The Wheel of Time, A Song of Ice and Fire, and many people love this world series. I hope when I jump into the series, I hope I will end up loving this world and finally can join in the bandwagon on why people love this world. And then moving on to the series that received 4 votes from booktubers, we have 2 series here. The first one is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, one of my top favorite series of all time. I've talked about this series so many times now on my YouTube channel, on Goodreads, and pretty much everywhere. And I'm glad this series keeps gaining more popularity as time goes by. And then the next series that received 4 votes is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This one is a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, I thought this would be at the number 1 spot, but as it turns out, it wasn't. Even though I know without a shadow of a doubt that this is the number 1 spot for many countless fantasy readers around the world. We only have 4 more series to go from Booktuber's choice, and the next 3, all of them received 5 votes. And these are, the first one is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. It is not a surprise that this one is so high among many people's favorite fantasy series of all time list, including mine. Brandon Sanderson is currently probably the most popular fantasy author without a TV show or movie adaptation going on right now. And I think that's about to change sooner or later. But besides that, I think it is safe to assume that many people, many fantasy readers click with Brandon Sanderson's writing and storytelling. And then the next series that received 5 votes is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. Similar to The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, it is not a surprise that the 16 books in The Realm of the Elderlings is rated very highly by booktubers, or well, not only booktubers really, Bookstagram, pretty much everywhere. I know that fantasy readers love The Realm of the Underlings, and it is also one of my top favorite series of all time. And that situation also applies to the next series that received 5 votes here, and that is The First Law World by Joe Abercrombie. The entire First Law World is currently 9 books long and also with 1 collection of short stories. And at this moment, the series is completed. But knowing Joe Abercrombie, I think he will eventually return to the world of the First Law. Not anytime soon. I predict it will be in the year 2027 or 2028, but I think he will come back to this world. But at this moment, this series is completed, and I consider this the best grimdark fantasy series that I have ever read. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we are at the end of the Booktubers Choices list, and this is Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, arguably one of the most complex and epic fantasy series of all time, and I'm glad to see that this series reached the number 1 spot. So that's the top 14 fantasy series according to more than 50 booktubers. Now I'm going to talk about the top 14 fantasy series according to almost 10,000 votes on Reddit on our Fantasy 2023. And I will start from number 16. Why number 16? I will talk about this soon, but first let's talk about this one. So at the number 16 spot with 107 votes is The Dresden Files by James Butcher. This one also appeared on Booktubers Choices list. But moving on to the next one, at the number 15 spot is actually Dune. Dune by Frank Herbert with 113 votes. And then at the number 14 spot is Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown with 121 votes. I'm going to exclude these two from the equation because I believe that the 50 Booktubers Choices doesn't include Dune and Red Rising Saga because at least from my perspective, I consider these two as a sci-fi and space opera series, and I did not include them in my list of favorite fantasy series. So for the sake of this video, to try to compare only fantasy series, I'm going to put the Dresden Files at the number 14 spot. And now we move on to the number 13, and it is The Kingkiller Chronicle by Petrik Rothfuss. With 130 votes, I am quite surprised that this did not appear in the top 14 series chosen by Booktubers. I know that this is a very beloved series, but personally speaking, even though The Kingkiller Chronicle is not finished and probably will never be finished, I will still think of it as an incredible fantasy series. Rothfuss' writing in Kingkiller Chronicle is just spectacular, and I'm glad that it received many votes to actually put it in the number 13 spot. And then at the number 12 spot is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling with 152 votes. Well, this is Harry Potter. I do not need to say anything else about this. This is probably the most popular fantasy series of all time, up there with The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I am, however, quite surprised that Harry Potter isn't mentioned more than once in the Booktubers Choices. And then we have another series that did not appear in the Booktubers pick, and it is with 159 votes, The Gentleman Bastards by Scott Lynch. I really love this series, especially The Lies of Locke Lamora. I consider that one of the best books of all time, and I know probably Booktubers and maybe reviewers have some of them have probably forgotten about The Gentleman Bastards because the fourth book just takes a long time. It is, to me, one of the Bermuda Triangle of epic fantasy, together with A Song of Ice and Fire and also The Kingkiller Chronicle. But fingers crossed, the fourth book will be out soon. I think out of the Bermuda Triangle, I think this one has the biggest chance of being released the soonest. And then at the number 10 spot with 173 votes, this is a surprise for me. This is The Greenbone Saga by Fondali. It makes me super happy seeing The Greenbone Saga gaining this many votes on our fantasy, even though I'm not active there. But you know what? But this is a sign of The Greenbone Saga gaining even more recognitions outside of those bookish social media that I usually visit, like Goodreads, bookish Twitter, Bookstagram, and of course Booktube. I am very happy. I think Fondali deserves it. And then at the number 9 spot, again, this is a surprise for me. This is Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson with 184 votes. With how many people constantly talk and praise the Malazan Book of the Fallen, I really thought that this would at least appear in the top 5 spot. But this is currently at the number 9 spot, which is again still pretty good. Out of so many series, this is at the number 9 spot, but I really thought this would reach even higher. And then at the number 8 spot is This World by Terry Pratchett, again with 209 votes. Once again, I haven't read This World yet, but as I said earlier, I am not surprised that many people love This World. It is so popular. And based on all the wise quotes that I've seen from the series, well, let's just say that I am not surprised that this series is so high among fantasy readers' opinion. And then at the number 7 spot, we have again The Realm of the Elder Lings by Robin Hobb with 228 votes. I love this series so much. Every time people talk about The Realm of the Elder Lings, it actually brings me joy. And for the next series on this list, with only 2 votes above The Realm of the Elder Lings, is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan and also Brandon Sanderson for the last 3 books. I haven't finished reading the series yet. I have only finished reading the 7th book, A Crown of Swords, and I will be diving into A Path of Daggers probably in the next 2 months. I am, however, to find out the final result of my thoughts and my ranking for The Wheel of Time once I'm done with the series. Not this year, for sure. And then at the number 5 spot, this is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So if you recall, earlier, Mistborn did not appear in Booktuber's choice, and I am completely shocked. I really thought Mistborn would at least appear in the top 10 spot. This is one of the most popular work by Brandon Sanderson, and one of the most beloved as well. This is the series that sparked my love for reading epic fantasy novels in the first place. So I am happy to see Mistborn in the number 5 spot for our Fantasy 2023. And at the number 4 spot, with a huge jump in the number of votes to 310 votes, we have A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I think this just goes to show just how incredible and legendary this series is, even though we always talk and joke around about the unfinished state of the series, but The Winds of Winter is now about 12 years in writing, and there are still so many people who think of A Song of Ice and Fire as being this amazing. And I honestly cannot fault them. I also consider this one of the best ongoing fantasy series, even though I felt mixed about Book 4 and Book 5. On my first read anyway, I expect I will end up loving them more on my second read. We only have 3 series left to go here, and then at the number 3 spot, we have The First Law World by Joe Abercrombie. Yes, I am very happy with this one. I remember saying, one time I remember saying that I love The First Law World more than A Song of Ice and Fire. I did get some negative comments about that, even though, well, this is my opinion. You do not have to agree, you know. But, well, I kind of feel validated that so many people voted for The First Law World as well. I think Joe Abercrombie is just too damn good at characterizations and writing battle scenes. The First Law World is, again, as I said earlier, the best grimdark fantasy series I have ever read so far. And now we move on to the runner-up spot. We have, with 371 votes, The Middle-earth Universe by J.R.R. Tolkien. So yeah, this is shocking to me. I mean, not the high ranking, but because this is not at the number 1 spot. I really thought this would reach the number 1 spot in our fantasy. But again, that's just my assumption because I am not active on Reddit at all. I don't even have an account there. And I don't think you need to hear me praise the Middle-earth universe any longer, though I will still say The Children of Hurin is so underrated, and I think it deserves so much more readership and praises. In my opinion, in my honest opinion, it is the best work by J.R.R. Tolkien, even better than The Lord of the Rings. And finally, at the number 1 spot with 380 votes, it is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Absolutely incredible, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the Stormlight Archive was also at the number 1 spot last year, I think. It is true that Sanderson, as I said, is one of the most popular authors right now, but I think we have to also agree that this is not my bias speaking here. I mean, I already mentioned plenty of times that I love his books, but I think we have to also agree now that many people love the Stormlight Archive, and so it is not a surprise that it is at the number 1 spot. So that's the end of the top 14 fantasy series on our Fantasy 2023. So now let's make a little conclusion out of these 2 data. Out of the top 14 series chosen by more than 50 booktubers, 4 series did not appear on the top 14 series chosen by our Fantasy 2023. Those are Threadlight Trilogy by Zach Argyle, The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu, The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham, and finally The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. And out of the top 14 fantasy series chosen by our Fantasy 2023, almost 10,000 votes, the same number, 4 series, did not appear on the list chosen by more than 50 booktubers. These are The Kingkiller Chronicle by Petrik Rothfuss, Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling, The Gentleman Bastard by Scott Lynch, and then finally Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So the final conclusion is this. Out of the data I compiled for the top 14 fantasy series of all time according to around 50 booktubers, compared to the top 14 fantasy series of all time according to our Fantasy 2023, we still have 10 same series being named as the best fantasy series of all time, as the most frequently voted. So if I were to exclude the series that did not appear on each other list, this is the top 10 fantasy series of all time according to 50 booktubers and also almost 10,000 votes on Reddit. And these are The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, The Greenbone Saga by Fonali. Actually, for The Greenbone Saga, both of them in both lists are at the number 9 spot now. Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson, This World by Terry Pratchett, The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, and then at the number 3 spot together in both lists is The First Law World by Joe Abercrombie, and then The Middle-earth Universe by J.R.R. Tolkien, and finally The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the end of today's video. I don't know whether this video actually serves a purpose or not, but it is to satisfy my curiosity. But evidently, even though around 50 booktubers votes compared to almost 10,000 votes on Reddit are hugely different in the total of numbers, 10 fantasy series still get chosen as the top fantasy series of all time, and I think that is an impressive correlation and result. Do let me know what you think about these data comparison, and let me know which one of these are your favorite series of all time and which one that you disagree would appear on your list of favorite fantasy series. Once again, just to make it clear, this does not mean that one list is better than the other list. At the end of the day, maybe this is all decided only by the popularity of the series. Although not always the situation, a popular fantasy series or a popular series does not instantly mean that it is objectively loved by many readers. But sometimes I do like to think positively that a series gets popular because, well, it is pretty good according to many readers. Simple as that. At the end of the day, reading is always a subjective experience, and these popular fantasy series have touched and made an impact on many readers' hearts. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. Do let me know once again what you think about today's video, and as always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.